Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first webinar series of many more to follow, where we are going to talk about standards and how it can help your organization become audit ready, grow your organization to a global level. And today's topic is very much on the same topic. We are going to talk about how you can use standards as an enabler for compliance and organizational growth. And we have none other than the most eminent speaker on this topic. We have Umesh Kumar Nandwani, sir. We have Nandwani sir, who's going to be speaking from his experience leading eminent roles at ISRO and METI. And he has been talking about standardization and how it could enable organization to become growth ready and audit ready. So we're going to discuss about this topic in detail. So without much ado, Nandwani sir, please take us away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
So let's start. Today's topic is on standards for compliance and organization growth and how to use standard as a tool for effective system design. Now, in this half an hour seminar, what I'll be doing, I'll be just telling about not only standard as a tool, also I'll be covering that how organization can move up in value chain by using various standards published by various standard development organizations we call SDOs. And then I'll try to link it with this, what we call it DIKW canvas, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, which lead to organizations to move up in value chain and be more competitive in business environment, and how standards can help in building the narrative for the organization, in framing their policies, designing their processes, architecting their procedures, and so on. And then I'll try to answer some very frequently asked questions, that how quality conscious organization try to use standards as a statement of truth. So they need not research each and everything, use the standard and take the content, translate that into organization policies and move forward in terms of what we call it standard operating procedures. How to make standard operating procedures based on these standards to ensure that they are accurate, they are comprehensive, complete, adequate, and so on. In the second segment, I'll very quickly brief what are various standard development organizations and what type of standards they have developed and they are in the process of developing, so that people can make use of the knowledge created by these SDOs. And then organizations, how they use their governance, risk, and compliance framework for various domains by using these set of standards, and how they can build a library of knowledge where BSB can help them, and how to interact with BSB. And that portion also I'll be covering in a very brief. Now, to start with, this session, with my experience, I know nowadays how organizations struggle. They have basically two challenges, that basically how to upgrade and utilize their investment which they have done in their infrastructure and the human resources. Because we have seen that the differentiator between a successful business house and their competitors is that who does more innovation, who is more creative, who manages the knowledge in a better way is more successful. So this has become a globally recognized fact. And now organizations have started appreciating this, and they are looking for opportunities, they are looking for pointers for be more innovative and creative in their work. So they want to improve their processes through innovations, implementing new technologies, and managing their knowledge which they have created over years. We saw historically, if we saw in 1990, the movement started with the quality management system, followed by environment management system, followed by occupational health and safety, and so on. And now we have moved to the Artificial Intelligence Management System, AIMS. This presentation is not on QMS, EMS, and also on, because this is more focused on the standardization and how to use standards, specifically ISO standards, to move up in the value chain. Now, we know that management in the organization look for a formal systems. They want to work globally. They want to be a very effective part of the supply chain. And big challenge is for them is the knowledge management, how to manage the knowledge. And that indicates the maturity level of an organization. So we have a DIKW canvas. We call it data in how to convert that data into information, and then how to convert that information into knowledge and into a wisdom. So knowledge is basically has become a synonymous with the professionalism. More knowledge you have, better professional you are treated, and you are more respected, and you have a better opportunity to do the business. So how this DIKW canvas works and how standards contribute are in this journey of moving from data to information to knowledge. If we see in this sheet, we start our life with the awareness, where we have a availability of content, we have a data, which is a fact data, which is a collection of unprocessed facts, a raw, unorganized form. We move in the value chain and try to convert this data in the form of information, so that we can find and we can measure it more easily, visualize it and analyze it. Here we are able to pinpoint how to adopt this information, how to absorb this information in an organization, and we try to answer who, what, when, and where. And this is the part where we start making our standard operating procedure. From where we take the content, we take from our experience, we take from our requirements, and most importantly, we take from the standards. So here, this is the point when we start converting data, organization data, into a information and try to institutionalize that by using our knowledge, and which is analyzable and have a meaning. We also start addressing how, and which is where we develop our internal capacity building programs, training programs, try to explain within the organization, our fraternity, that how to do that, why this is happening. So to answer how and why, we try to build our capacity and capability in the organization. Each level we use different set of standards. We are at a data level, we use very preliminary standards. When we are at option and absorption level, we use standards which answer our queries of who, what, when, and where. When we move further up and want to build our organization with a knowledgeable people having a wisdom, and when we start applying our knowledge into action and ability to make well-informed decision, we try to answer how and why. So I'll try to answer with a case study, with a small example of my experience on 27001, that how you can move when you implement information security management system from standard operating procedures to up in a value chain, and where we really become a professional organization and try to answer how and why queries also. So if we see organization maturity, moving up in value chain and building narrative by using standards. For any organization, it is a big challenge to build a sound narrative so that their internal employees understand, appreciate about whatever is written there, procedures or whatever they are being trained in their during their capacity building program. And for management also, it's interesting that to make their governance more smooth, based on the results of the risk analysis or risk management, they can address knowingly their risk appetite, they can address various risks, whether they are business risk our environment risk, our quality risk, our information security risk, our safety, our energy management risk in a very organized, in a structured way. By taking the help of a set of standards, they can meet a very sound framework they can make, which answers their all the problem areas. So to sum up, every organization have a set of problems. So we translate those problems in a narrative, in the terminology, technical terminology of risk, and how to manage that risk. We use various workflows and various narratives given by these standards of risk management like ISO 31000 and so on. And there is a set of governance standards also. So these help us to create a framework within an organization so that our most of the risks are addressed and answers, and we are a compliant society and play a more meaningful role in the organization. So for sustainable growth, most of the organizations, they strive for three things: to remain current with the development of technologies and compliance requirements. This is essential requirement for doing business, that you know where you are playing and where your adversaries are, and what is your compliance requirements. Could be legal compliance, could be contractual compliance, could be policy compliance, and so on. Second aspect of this sustainable growth is to move up in the value chain. Third is the leadership role of the organization positioning in industry, trade, and social life. So all these things are generally answered by various set of standards. Quality conscience is there in every organization. They want to do the right things. Now question comes, when we say we want to do the right things, what is the right thing? Is it subjective? Who decide what is right, what is wrong? I decide, we will decide as an organization, society will decide, law will decide, or majority of people will decide, elders will decide, or our religion will decide. Does it depend on upbringing, social environment, and belief system? Is it dependent on cultural perception, morality, driven by dictates of religion, or free will, or anything? Something is like, anything is there like universally right. So when we start in an organization to make our policies, translating those policies into procedures, it is always in our mind that we should do the right thing, which is legally compliant and so on. So answer is that follow the standards to that subject area. That will give you a direction that what is the right thing, because standardization nature, the process of standardization by nature is very widely accepted. Why it is widely accepted? Because a standard is defined as a document which is established by consensus. So first keyword is a consensus and approved by a recognized body. That is the second keyword that provides for common and repeated use, rules, guidelines, or characteristics or activities or their results aiming at achieving the optimal degree of order in a given context. This definition itself, you can see, establishes the fact that a standard is basically comes out to be a statement of truth now, because there is a consensus. It's approved by a recognized body and so on. So knowledge contained in the standards now needs to be brought out into our procedures or in a documentation. More popularly, we know, call it standard operating procedures or document organization documents or executive procedures and so on. There are various nomenclatures, but SOP is a very commonly known procedure where we can take the key pointers in this SOP by the various set of standards. Now, what should be the key attribute of a standard operating procedure, which is an authorized documented procedure or a set of procedures or work instructions or test instructions for production and control? The attributes of this SOP should be specific, detailed, easy to understand, visually appealing. It should be regularly updated, should be current, traceable, and it should be attributes. It should contain the attributes or metrics or method of measurement so that we can say that particular process or procedure is effective and efficient. Should focus on quality, compliance oriented, try to fix the accountability, and there should be feedback mechanism that how to improve this standard operating procedure. it should be accessible, and somewhere it should apply, also address the compliance procedure and how it is fitted in a organization level compliance mechanism or compliance management system. So now that was as far as SOP was, how to make SOP, and message was that for making SOP, take the key pointers from the applicable or in context standards developed by any standard development organization which has gone through a consensus process and authorized approval process. Now let's see what are various standard development organizations, SDOs. Most popular, of course, is International Standards Organization. Then there's a International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC. For people who are working in electrotechnology or cybersecurity, NIST is another standard development organization. American Petroleum Institute, API, specifically addressing petroleum products. ETSI, telecommunication. British Standard Institute, another very popular standards organization, which is non-profit making SDOs. European Committee for Standardization, and Underwriters Laboratories. Underwriters Laboratories focus more on the safety standards. So these are the various standards development organizations where people can refer the standards published by these and develop their standard operating procedures. International Standards Organization, most popular, has developed more than 25,000 international standards by 300 plus technical committees of the various fields like health, IT, transport, environmental sustainability, management and services, security, safety and risk, energy, engineering standards, materials, diversity and inclusion. So we can see it has a very wide areas where they have published more than 25,000 standards through a consensus process. Similarly, International Electrotechnical Commission has developed 12,000 plus international standards, primarily focused on electrotechnical area, which covers electrical engineering portion, electronics, electro-optics, acoustics, multimedia, telecommunication to some extent, mostly covered by ITU, medical technology, and IT standards, which is jointly covered by JTC1, SC27 by ISO and IEC. So there are many other disciplines where IEC makes standards focused on electrotechnology, covering terminology, vocabulary, symbols, safety, how to measure performance, dependability, very interesting subject which many people from defense are interested for working dependability management or reliability, maintainability, and so on, safety, environment, and so on. So very interesting standards have been published by IEC and ISO. Now, how to use now these standards? So I'm not covering other standards bodies. Mainly I've covered ISO and IEC and how many standards they've published, and both have office headquartered at Geneva, and their standards are mostly used by adoption by national standards bodies as SDOs. In India, we have Bureau of Indian Standards as a standard development organization. Now where we use these standards? We use these standards for governance, risk, and compliance mainly. If we have to use a single line statement, so we can say it's a governance, risk, and compliance. And exactly for policy formulation, we use these standards. Policy deployment, we use these standards. Regulatory requirements, de facto says that if these standards are used as a reasonable controls, you will be deemed compliant. Business environment requirement, where we have to compete with our people who are working in the same field, then how we are better than them. So what type of standards we use and what type of standards they use. Then most important is the contract requirement. If any contract requirement is there, if any legal requirement is there, we have to use that. We can't, is non-negotiable. Then societal requirements.
Nandwani sir, just a polite nudge that we are at 21 minutes past the webinar time. If you could wrap up the content in the next 4 minutes, so we leave room for Q&A.
Sure, sir. So now I like to highlight that how to build a library of knowledge by collection of these standards. First is that governance, risk, and compliance, which is facilitated by building knowledge and wisdom of the organization. There are 3 tasks that first of all, organization should know what is the scope, context of their working. Then they should define policies, and then what type of challenges they face and how to address those challenges. Now, after identifying the requirements, they can define the various models available with them for procurement, for building the library of knowledge, like subscription of a complete set, subscription of a standard segment, subscription by custom collection, and decision of subscription versus purchase. So they can choose anyone depending on their applicability. They can go and purchase the whole bouquet, or they can go by the technical committee or subcommittee wise, where BSB can help them in identifying and meeting the standard. Now it's an investment. In knowledge, people should not worry too much on return on investment, because it's an investment, long-term investment in building the knowledge or capability of the organization. So procurement should be thought from that angle, because it's a life cycle calculation. Time required for absorption of technologies should be considered. Risk of not having a standard or knowledge should be considered. Risk of becoming obsolete should be considered. Risk of going out of competition should be considered. Building a culture of adoption and respect from professional approach should be considered, including patents, copyrights, and other legal requirements, intellectual property rights. Consider risk of non-compliance with regulatory requirements while taking a decision whether you want to procure or you don't want to procure a standard. So if you want to move up in value chain from data to information, BSB will be ready to help you. And for example, if you want to start information security management system for compliance to ISO 27000, the 0 point should be these 4 standards: ISO 27000, 27001, 27002, and 27005. You can start with a very small slip, experience that, and then build your library of knowledge to move from the information to the wisdom, to the knowledge and to the wisdom, by enlarging your knowledge on the family of standards, which is now reached to the around 250 plus standards. Now, this investment is a very useful investment for you to be in the business. You have to comply and move up into the value chain. And just to conclude now, procurement of standards should be considered as an investment rather than expenditure. From the governance, risk and compliance perspective, from the present future requirements of your processes, technologies, knowledge and competency requirements. So keeping these two things in mind, the senior executive management shall make a policy and shall drive the organization by their leadership, so that organization can move towards a mature, professional and on the successful path. Thank you very much for listening patiently this presentation.
Thank you, Nandwani sir. And I think your wrap-up conclusion segues really well into the questions that are coming in. But before we jump into the questions, I have one attendee waiting for a long time with his hand raised. So, Darshad, would you like to pose your question live to Nandwani sir? I'm allowing you to speak up. Mr. Darshad, would you like to pose your question live? Going once, going twice. Okay, I think Darshad has not been able to speak up. I see somebody else raised their hand too. Sudhir. Okay, I've allowed Sudhir to speak up. Mr. Sudhir, are you able to speak up? You're on mute. Okay, people are feeling shy, so they've raised their hands, but they haven't posed their questions. So I'm going to go to the questions here, if possible. All right, we have the first question is, how can I quantify benefits accrued using these standards to leadership? And I believe the next question would also probably work well within the same one, is how do I convince leadership to invest money in purchasing legitimate standards?
Yeah, interesting question. This is again a question where most people, this is a point of concern, that they have to convince their management that they for doing some investment, what is ROI? Because finance people ask that, and they are rightful in asking that question, that you are doing this investment, what is the return on that? So this has to be viewed from the two perspective. Like if we see from the perspective of the management or the senior management who has to do business, and they want to do some mature decision they have to take in the context that they are building an institution capability and capacity, where they are talking about the future technologies. They want to compete where their professionals should be knowledgeable enough to talk a professional language, and they have to invest. So this point should not always be seen from the ROI perspective. It's a long-term life cycle investment, very similar to like any country invest in their education system. So they don't see in an isolated case that what is the return if I spending our 3% budget or 4% budget on education. But if we see, if you integrate in the end of the day, that decides the maturity of the organization, their professional index, and all those things. And that's how a organization is seen globally, that how their population behave, what is their knowledge level. So organization also think from that angle, that it is not an isolated case. They should not go by standard, that each standard, how to find out ROI. Second part of this answer is that how to if any management is fussy to calculate ISO, we can give a link where, of course, many years back, ISO published in their magazine a methodology for calculating ROI. It's a mathematical model which tells you how to calculate ROI for taking a decision to purchase or not to purchase a standard. And it says that you have to see, in that model, you remove a standard, use of standard. If you are not, you say that we will not use this, we will not follow this standard, and then find out how much losses you are going to make. So that sort of mathematical model is there, part of that. And so I understand there was a French team which did some research and brought out this model, which was published in ISO. We can give you the link, you can refer that. But common answer is that that each standard contains a lot of knowledge, not lot of value. It enhances your professionalism. It makes you compliant legally as well as contractually. So at the organization level, yes, we should factor all these things, that what is the risk of non-compliant or risk of losing the business if we don't build a library of standards. Second is that,
Sure.
yeah, sorry.
No, please go ahead. I will let you finish. And then
Yeah, second is that ISO IC also facilitate for you to taking a decision that what it contains, because sometimes it's difficult to see that what it contains. So if you go and see the purview of any ISO, that facility is there. It gives you a content list. It gives you scope. It gives you a coverage and all those things up to some extent freely. And then it masks all those things which are copyright protected. So there, that facilitate you to take a decision whether that standard is useful for you or not. And after reading that, then you can take a decision to go for purchasing or subscription or whatever you want. Yeah, I think I have answered this question.
Sure. And I think, you stressed well on the cost of inaction towards staying compliant. So I think that would be a great segue into the next question that's coming from the audience. Mr. Altaf Mohammed has asked, what are the key performance indicators that organizations track to assess the effectiveness of their compliance and growth system?
Yeah. So one is that, again, you can see from that effectiveness compliance could be from simplest is the compliance from the perspective of regulatory requirement or a contractual requirement. If any standard is invoked there and your SOP takes a key pointer from that standard, if that standard is invoked in deemed or directly in a law and in a contract document, and if you are complying, so indicator is that yes, you have used that standard nicely. For example, I'll tell you, in IT Act and its rule, it says that you should have a reasonable good practices for a cyber security, which implies that you use ISO 27001 framework. And if you are a compliant, you are a certified, and you are meeting all contractual conditions, So best key performance indicator is that the way you have translated the requirement of these standards into your operating procedures are effective. If your internal audit reports are showing or external audit reports are showing a compliant system, you should be happy to that. Another key performance indicator, of course, is definitely that there should be some reduction in wastage, reduction in savings, or enhancement in savings, and efficiency means it should take less time, your system should be interoperable, and your increased knowledge level on that subject area. So that are the key performance indicators. And as I told in my one of the slides that your SOP, standard operating procedure, should indicate some of the metrics. That what metrics? It will be organization dependent, policy, and what investment they want to do in that. What metrics you want to identify to say that particular process is effective. But broadly, it should reduce the time, it should reduce the wastages, it should enhance the compliance levels, and most importantly, I say it should enhance the professionalism of that particular person who is the user. So it should factor three factors. I'll say that who is the asset owner regarding to that, who is the process owner, and who is the risk owner. If the concerns of risk owner of that particular procedure or process is addressed, process owner issues are addressed, and the asset owner issues are addressed, I think if these three stakeholders are happy by using a procedure which is based on a standard, I think indicators are very healthy.
Thank you, Nandwani sir. I think we have room for one more question. I know we are 3 minutes over time, but I think it's more of an observation than a question uh, from Vasudha ma'am. If standards can be released along with deployment tools or frameworks which are easy to adopt, that becomes more useful. Nowadays, there's a comparison table, but can be improved. I think what she intends to ask is if there is a way to release a standard along with a way to deploy it into the org too. Are there any best practices here or any frameworks which you have seen deployed in organizations that make it easy to adopt a standard, Nandwani sir?
Yeah, answer. I think this is again very interesting question because people struggle for this. See, one is that there's a set of standards which gives a requirement, like 9001, 14001, and we have 27001. Followed by this, ISO also, ISO and IEC both publish a code of good practices or implementation guidelines and many things which support. That's why we call it a family of standards. Like ISO 27001 is supported by ISO 27002. Now 27001 gives you the requirement, and 27002 gives you a sufficient guidance that how to meet those requirements. And this principle is applicable to quality management system, which is 9001, environment management system, 14001, energy management, everywhere. So what we suggest you is to move up in the value chain, not only see the requirement standard, please see the sporting standard or family of standards so that you can purchase a bouquet and you can see that your level of compliance is not only good, they are adequate, they are powerful enough to convince your customers or potential customers that their issues are addressed in these through those standards. It can be product compliance, it can be quality standard, any standard. The whole family of standards gives you enough confidence that you are and you will be a compliant organization.
Thank you so much, Nandwani sir, for answering that question. We have one last question which says, how can we manage the latest version of standards? Is there any way? Um, I would like to plug in saying that, BSB is probably the answer to that, but if you have a better answer to that, Nandwani sir, would be
I'll
good
answer
to know.
that. Yeah. See, there
Sure.
if you are going for a subscription through BSB, by default, it will be you will get all the amendments. So you will be always current. So that's why we recommend go for a subscription so that you are always current, you know what is happening globally and what changes are taking place technically, procedurally, process-wise, and so on. And one more thing that these ISO, IEC standard also factor sufficiently the sustainable development criteria globally required for world trade and all those things. So you will be deemed compliant if you comply with ISO, IEC standards. So you will be deemed compliant with sustainable development. You will be current if you go for subscription. Similarly, you can refer now these catalogs are always available now, ISO to you on their site. And you can see that latest version there by referring their online catalog. And you know that what is happening. But there you have to put effort. You have to refer that. But if you take the subscription, by default, you will be getting all the amendments and current versions.
Perfect. I think that wraps up our, this particular webinar occurrence nicely. I know we went 7 minutes over time, but we were able to address most of the questions that came in. I think just one last amendment from Vasudha ma'am is she meant more on the applicable regulatory and statutory that the standard satisfies benefits in the standard, most quantified if possible, but she is appreciating the fact that you answered the query too. Awesome. I do see Hemant Kumar Natarajan raise his hand. Would you like to answer your question live? I've enabled talking rights on the webinar.
Yeah, what is the
Hemant,
question? He has raised the hand, Hemant Kumar.
yeah, yeah, I don't see his question yet, but I've
Yeah.
allowed him to speak up live. Hemant, would you be able to go off mute and be able to answer your question?
Thank you, sir, for providing this opportunity for us, and also giving the the standard how to manage, and also how to upgrade ourselves and improve our company growth. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much. Perfect. I think that's a great way to probably wrap up the session too. I don't see any more questions, but if anybody in the audience has more questions that you would like to post to Nandwani sir or any of the BSPH team, please feel free to send it to the same email that you got the invite from. You would also be getting a recording of the webinar so that you have this recorded for reference, and you should also be able to find this on our YouTube channel. Thanks for attending this, and hopefully you look forward to more such webinars from experts like Nandwani sir. Thank you, Nandwani sir. A good day to everyone who attended the webinar.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, listening patiently. Thank you very much.
Thank you.